Kurt, PBT Extra this week. We got to start with LeBron James and Isaiah Stewart. They had a bit of a kerfuffle, and it resulted in multiple suspensions. LeBron was out 1 game, Isaiah Stewart out 2 games. What was your take on the whole thing?
I thought this was relatively fair. I mean, I think you can make a really good argument that LeBron should have gotten the same amount of time as Stewart because he kind of instigates this, intentional or not. Punched a guy in the face and drew blood, man. Like that. I think Stewart got an extra game because of efforts 2, 3, and 4 to get to LeBron. He's quite the running back, by the way. He just threw Cade Cunningham aside and plowed over people to get where he wanted to go. But it's not a good look for the league. I thought they'd even come down a little harder, frankly. The league doesn't like that. You know, it's very concerned about its image and having players like that was a legitimate, blood down the face fight. That wasn't the normal pushing, ooh, thank God those people are in my way faux fight of the NBA, right? That was legit. So I thought the league handled it fairly well. It's just they would really like this to go away. I mean, what did you think? What did you think when you saw it?
Yeah, there have been different eras in the NBA, and I think the current era, we forget how far the NBA has come from the old school days where things like this were, more common than not. So I agree that I think that the NBA is trying to clean it up, but I didn't understand efforts 2, 3, and 4 like we talked about. If there is a misunderstanding, I could imagine, yes, tensions are flared, but you're a professional. You have to treat the game and your coworkers as professionals. And I don't understand the argument of street cred. I don't understand that. You're a professional, act like a professional. So that's kind of my take on it.
Yeah. But do you think, I think pretty clearly the blood and seeing his own blood triggered him. I mean, you've been a high level professional athlete. How hard is it in that moment to rein yourself in?
It's difficult. Like I said, I think, to whom much is given, much is required. And I think in this kind of scenario, you have to be able to control your temper. I think, any type of pushing aside assistant coaches and other players to try to attack another coworker, because everyone's in the league together. I don't think you should do that. And so I know it's difficult, but you have to be able to control your temper when you're in those types of scenarios, in my opinion. And like I said, you don't have to look very far to go back in the history books 30, 40 years ago, and even before that, to what the NBA had to endure as far as fights being more common than not, and the game's come a long way. So from my perspective, I don't understand, and I think both players need to move forward. And I appreciate how LeBron tried to reach out, this is the first time he's been suspended in a 19-year career. So I think. I get it. I understand tensions flared, but you're a professional. You can't allow that to happen.
Yeah. I think one thing to watch, by the way, when you combine this incident with just like a week or two before and the Nikola Jokic just, blasting in the guy in the back, I think if there's another really physical, actual situation like this in the next few weeks or month, the league will come down harder. I think that there'll become a moment of, hey, we've been a little too lenient. We really have to send a message. I think if there's another incident, the league is going to take it. I don't want to say more seriously. It's not like they don't take it seriously, but I think that the punishments will get stiffer as a deterrent.
Something to look forward to as that develops throughout the rest of the season, see how the league's going to respond. But let's think about this for a second. Phoenix Suns, they're on a 13-game winning streak. They look pretty good.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on them as a team?
I think we kind of slept on them a little bit. Look, they ran back the team that made it to the NBA Finals last year, and there's a sense of they got some breaks, right? Like they did. A lot of things fell their way. Other teams had injuries last year during the playoffs, but frankly, nobody makes the finals. Jordan's 72-win Bulls don't make the finals if you don't catch a break or two with health and everything else. Right? Everybody needs them. They got a lot last year, but this was a reminder this is a really good team. They got healthy they started a little slow. They looked a little championship hungover at the start. They got healthy against the soft part in the schedule, but they had a couple of really nice wins since then as well. And they've got some, the Nets are coming up. They've got some tough games coming up for them.
Yeah, Cleveland,
Cleveland.
Knicks, Nets, and Golden
Yeah.
State currently the best team in the league.
Yeah. Yeah, and Cleveland is no pushover. Cleveland is legitimate this year. You're going to have to earn that win. So the real tests are coming, but this was just a reminder that this team has got to be in the mix. When you're talking about, look, the Warriors have established themselves as the best team in the West, but when you're talking about who's going to come out of the West after them, they have established, the Suns have to be in that conversation. Utah kind of has to be in that conversation there too. And I think this run is just a reminder, hey, this is a really good team, and it's a really balanced, deep, versatile team that can beat you a lot of ways.
Look, when you think about the West alone, I mean, Golden State and Phoenix, that's a really tough road for any team. I think Golden State, like you said, clearly they have Steph, they have clear front runner in the MVP, clearly the best team. But Phoenix, I always find it interesting. To me, Phoenix is like the Western Conference version of the Bucks. You know, at the current moment, where it's just like, look, they're really good, and we're going to judge them on, you know, what happens later in the season. But I just think it's so funny to me how we forget about Devin Booker and company at times, you know, because they're not as glamorous as some of the other teams, but they have the results. They get the job done.
And they didn't do the sexy things in the offseason that got us talking. Utah was, again, kind of in the same boat. Like, oh, the Lakers got Russell Westbrook, and this creates this buzz with Anthony Davis, and how good are they going to be? And, you know, the Warriors and, you know, we're going to bring back Clay, and they were going to look more like their old selves, and how good were they going to be? And we get distracted by the shiny new toys, right? Like, ooh, let's talk about that. Let's discuss that. And meanwhile, they ran back a team that made it to the finals, and they look like a team that could look, that's in the mix again. They can be that good again. Like you said, we'll see what it looks like at the end of the season, but this is a very good basketball team that's going to be very good for years to come.
Now, I want to bring your attention to a California team, Sacramento. We don't talk about Sacramento very often. Well, they fired Luke Walton, and they started 6-11. Where do the Kings go from here?
Pretty much the same, aren't they? Like, Luke Walton wasn't the problem. Now, I don't think he was the solution. I don't think. Look, I said this before. I think that they're a bit of a chopped basket of a roster, right? Like the cooking show Chopped. Like, hey, here's some alligator and some kumquats and some sour gummies. Go make a delicious meal. Like
those were the three that came to mind: alligators, kumquats, and sour gummies.
It's just there's three disparate ingredients I can come up.
Wow, that's a tough. Wow, okay. I don't want to be on your cooking show.
No, but
wow,
it's a roster that doesn't really meld. You've got Fox is best in transition. Halliburton doesn't really run like that. He's more of a pick and roll guy. They've got great chemistry with Rashawn Holmes. You've got Harrison Barnes kind of wants to be an isolation guy. Like the roster doesn't really mesh all that well, but Walton wasn't able to get that more out of it. But more importantly, this was just a reminder that there's real pressure from ownership to make the postseason, to at least get into the play-in games. Because, I mean, it's been 15 years since they made the actual playoffs in Sacramento, and it's hard to miss the playoffs 15 years in a row in the NBA. We send more than half the teams to the playoffs. Like, you've got to be consistently bad. There's real pressure to change that. I don't think that this solves the problem with this team. And ultimately, the real problems with this team start with ownership, start with a meddling. I mean, this is now, I think Alvin Gentry becomes the 6th coach, and they've had 4 GMs in the 9 years that Vivek Ranadive has owned the team. Like, there's just no consistency. There's an impatience, and it goes deeper than that. There are bigger issues with meddling ownership that just look. You are familiar with the model of how not to get in the. San Antonio was under the Holtz has been the model of let the basketball people do the basketball things. That's not a business we know, but there's a lot of owners out there who were very successful in whatever their other industry was who think that they can step in and run a basketball team.
Well, I want to see what happens in Sacramento, and because, like you said, could this be a moment? Look, they've had a lot of dark spots recently, but maybe there's hope. Maybe there's hope in Sacramento. I want to see it. I'm hopeful.
It's the new building there is spectacular. The Golden One Center is one of the nicer buildings in the arena. Downtown Sacramento is it's a nice area. Like, it's a city I like going to. It's fun to be in now, which I'm not sure I would have said 10, 15 years ago. It's a city that's the downtown has really picked up. It's such a starved fan base. Like I want to see them succeed. I'm just not sure. Alvin Gentry is going to get them running more probably, but I just don't know that this is a roster built to compete really in the West with even in a down year is still pretty good.
Wait, so Kurt, you think about like the Pelicans when Stan Van Gundy came in, right? You had Brandon Ingram, Zion, you had some nice pieces, but it wasn't translating. I guess how do you compare this situation that Alvin Gentry finds himself in with Barnes, with Bagley, with Buddy Hield, with Halliburton, the nice young talent? Do you think that there could be a step forward, like at all this season, without it being something completely out of the question?
I don't think it's completely out of the question, but I think it's got to start with in New Orleans. Here's the thing: Zion Williamson, when he's healthy, which has been a little too rare and a whole different discussion. Zion Williamson, when healthy, is an all-NBA level player right now. Like when he was point Zion last year, he didn't play enough games to make an all-NBA team, but he was that level of good. You have the franchise anchor. You know what you need to do. Brandon Ingram is an all-star level player. You know what you need to do to get to being like a couple of anchor pieces are there, and we can discuss the pieces around them, but there's some foundational players there. I'm not sure De'Aaron Fox has been that guy. He certainly hasn't been this season. He's regressed a little this season, and whether that's the new ball or it's something else, his shot's been off. He hasn't been the same, and he hasn't stepped forward and been what they're now paying him to be. He got that max extension. They need him to be a all-star level number one option. He hasn't been. If they don't have that, then what are they?
It's hard to build around a team if you don't have that kind of franchise player stepping in. So we'll see what happens and what ends up playing out in Sacramento. But now I want to take you to a place where there's no doubt, Memphis. There's no doubt, Ja Morant is the man.
Yeah,
he is a bad man on the basketball court. They defeated Utah, one of the best teams. We talked about this all the time, in PBT Extra, how consistently good and how beautiful of a team Utah is constructive-wise. What does this mean for the Grizzlies?
The Grizzlies are just so up and down because they are the worst defense in the NBA this season. So Ja Morant is, I think we've discussed before, he is literally my favorite player to watch. If I'm flipping around and Memphis is on League Pass, I will stop and watch Memphis. He is a 6'3" guy, as Kirk Goldberry said at ESPN this week. 6'3", skinny guy. He leads the league in buckets at the rim. Like, he gets to the rim with this Iverson-esque style. I love watching him. Jaren Jackson Jr. has had some good up and down moments, but he's starting to come around. There's some players there, Bane, and they've got just some nice young pieces that they've got to fill out around Ja, but they've got to start defending. They are the worst defense in the NBA. So when they win, it's kind of entertaining. It's a shootout, but you're not going to win consistently in the NBA if you can't get stops. And right now they can't stop anybody. And so I mean, what do you think of that? What do you I've been telling you got to watch Ja. I mean, what do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, Ja is amazing. I think that's very straightforward. He's amazing.
Yeah.
I think that when I look at Ja and Jaren Jackson Jr., I do think that's a pretty compelling duo when they're both playing, obviously at a high level, when they're both healthy and available. It kind of reminds me of, this is not the same. I'm just throwing it out there. Tatum and Brown in the Celtics of just two players who could, be a very deadly 1-2 punch. And Brooks, I like how Brooks is filling that role as a third guy consistently, but I think they just missed the big presence. I really liked Valanciunas.
Yeah, well,
I thought Valanciunas was one of the brightest spots for that team last year going down the stretch. So to me, that's kind of been my question mark is, I know you have Ja, but how can you put the pieces around Ja to give you that consistency over an 82, over 80 plus games and going into the playoffs?
Yeah, and what Valanciunas also brings, and I think if you've got Ja driving the lane, you have to have a five who can space the floor a little, right? Like you've got to, you've got to have somebody who can, I think, step out. You don't have to play like five out, but you need somebody who can at least not clog the lane. And Steven Adams, who plays hard and does what he does very well, but I don't have to leave him to cover him 15 feet from the basket, right?
But the thing that's really great about Valanciunas as well was he was getting you a double-double. Like he was getting you over 10 rebounds a game. Some games he would even get, high tens, just rebounding machine. And I love that aspect that, like, for me right now, the big men in the NBA, it's like you're either one of two guys, either like a floor spacer and you're shooting threes, right? Or you're someone who can give you, maybe like a 12 and 10.
Yeah.
And that's a very valuable position. Getting you 12 and 10 every night. You can play for a long time in the NBA and make a lot of money. And I love how Valanciunas was a little bit of both. I'm not saying he's the best big man shooter, but to kind of do that for that team, I thought was one of the most compelling things about the Grizzlies, beyond Ja.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm not totally sure how they're going to build out this roster around Ja, but ultimately the hardest part is still getting that guy, right? Is getting that all NBA level player you can build around. They've at least got one of those in and maybe two, but at least one in Memphis.
Yeah, I think the best blueprint for them is Utah, who they just beat. Yeah. You have Donovan Mitchell, who can slash and go to the rim and hit threes, be an offensive machine. But then also you got Rudy Gobert, who's one of the best high pick and roll players and can get you 20 rebounds and bring that excellent kind of defense. That would be probably the best. Could you imagine Ja playing with someone like Rudy?
Someday they are going to get him a true pick and roll partner. And maybe Jaren Jackson Jr. becomes that guy. But if they get him a true Clint Capella with Trae Young, kind of just set the pick, roll hard, roll man, I think you'll see Ja take another step. But I think they need that, and they need somebody. They need somebody who can be. They're not a good defensive team right now, and whether it's finding a center or getting better guys out on the perimeter, they've got to start finding a way to get stops.
So I want to draw your attention to another big man who just won Dancing with the Stars, Iman Shumpert. So Iman won. Did you get to see any of the show?
I will say that might not be a show I watch a lot of. I did see the highlights. I did watch his winning dance, and I thought it was interesting. I was at Clippers Mavericks the other night, and so somebody asked Jason Kidd about this because Kidd played with Shumpert back in the day, and his reaction was like, "He's got quick feet." And that was pretty much it.
Then he's really good feet. He won Dancing with the Stars. I guess that's a requirement. So who do you think is the next NBA player to fill that spot? If you had to guess,
oh man,
who would you want to see?
It'd be interesting. I'm not sure who's a great dancer around the league. I'm not sure that any of them paint themselves that way necessarily. I would love to see, though. I'm trying to think of guys who would be kind of like, you can get too tall. Kareem was out there. I'm not sure. He was a little older, but I'm not sure. He was so tall. I'm not sure it worked. And by the way, Mark Cuban, that didn't work when he was on there.
I think Iman should pick it. I think it should be like that, kind of like just keep it. The people who get to do it get to choose the next ones. And I think that'd be kind of fun.
Yeah, but I could see I don't think Steph Curry do it, but it'd be kind of fun to see Trae Young or somebody go out there and see what they could do.
Speaking of footwork, oh yeah, could you imagine?
Yeah, exactly. Somebody's got somebody quick like that be kind of fun.
So hey, look, another thing that I can circle on my calendar, the premiere of Dancing with the Stars, to see whoever is going to be the next NBA player. But congratulations to Iman.
Hey Corey, you could do it.
No. I think I'm missing the very valuable former NBA player. I was never one of those.